G'day, it's your old mate Matthew here from The Yarnsman. Welcome to The Yarnsman podcast. In this episode we have James Laughlin. It's actually first published episode of 2025. Really interesting episode. It comes with a trigger warning on suicide and sexual abuse. In this one we talk about kindness. James has suffered suicide bereavements recently, and so we touched on going on a mission to find out about it and how to best support his son. And pulling out that's really interesting that the main primary risk factor is a lack of a positive present role model. Dive into talking about taking your meds, so mental training, exercise, diet and sleep, and really at the start of the day considering what is most important to you. So hope you enjoy this as much as I did. Hello and welcome to the Yarnsman podcast. Today we have James Laughlin in the high-tech podcast studio. How are you, James?
Brilliant, even better for seeing you, Matthew. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. James is a partner, a father, a 7-time world champion, and a international speaker. Let's jump into the questioning. What have you struggled with in the last week, mate?
Great question. Last week. Actually, the one thing I've struggled with is, so my son, Finn, he's an only child, really keen for him to be involved in team sports. And up to this stage, he's 8 at the minute. He's not really shown much interest in team sport. But this last term, he's shown interest in cricket, wanted to join cricket. So we got him signed up for old boys. And surf lifesaving, started that. He's in a hip hop class and he's swimming. So lots of activities. Want to keep him engaged. But Sunday was his first day at surf lifesaving. Stubbed his little toe, ended up breaking it. And so no activities for the next month. So I kind of feel his feelings a lot. And I think as a dad, whatever his emotions are, I kind of take them on. And so sometimes it's a bit overwhelming. So I would say in the last week, I've struggled with that. I've been taking on his worries and I'm worried for him. But I know that it'll make him stronger and he will get through it and he'll be better for it and we'll be back to it in no time. But in this last few days, it's been on my mind. So yeah, I've struggled with that.
It's an interesting one because there's the big thing about getting comfortable with failure, right? And do you sort of feel that coming through? Like if he's hurt himself or is this a failure, how do we build some resilience and move forward? Is that part of it?
Totally. And I think failure is a brilliant thing. Like any successful people I meet are massive failures and consistent failures.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think encouraging him to fail is a great thing. It's just trying to communicate that to an 8-year-old. That's challenging, and let him see the bigger picture. He just sees this week and today. He doesn't see the bigger picture. So yeah, definitely I believe that resilience is only built through going through tough things. You can't build resilience by reading a book on resilience, or listening to a podcast on how to be more resilient. You've got to get out into the world, out of your living room and fall.
And try some things, right?
Yeah, be uncomfortable.
Looking ahead to next week, what's something you want to work on?
Next week. So next week, this last 2 weeks have been great, Matthew. So I haven't travelled at all, and it sounds kind of almost like, geez, that's a bit privileged of you to say such a thing. But actually, I love being at home, and we live in a very quiet place, and I enjoy routine. But my work takes me up to Auckland a lot, Queenstown, across the ditch. I'm speaking a lot at events. So next week that starts again. I've had 2 weeks at home. And so when I think about next week, it's going to be about how do I find structure and just maintaining self-discipline while I'm on the road again.
Good. What are you proud of?
It's a really good question. I'm really proud. I mean, is that question more so of myself, in terms of what I'm proud of myself doing, or proud of people around me?
It's completely up to you.
Look, I'm really proud of my son. Really proud of how he operates in the world. He got player of the day at cricket. And I'm not one of those parents that goes, hey, you got this. Because I'll tell you why he got it. He got it not because he's the best batsman, not because he's the best bowler, but because he was really kind. And at the end, the coach came over and went, I was going to give best player to such and such, James, but I'm going to give it to Finn. Because see, at the end, you see what he did? It was just so kind. And so I'm really proud that he has like a kindness there. And long may that continue.
Well, that's really cool. I am quite interested to know, what do you get for Player of the Day now? Is it still a Morrow bar or a McDonald's cheeseburger voucher?
Big upgrade, actually. I was surprised. So you get like a $2 plastic but looks like it's gold trophy, and you bring it back each week. And also you get a voucher to Joe's Garage, the restaurant. And
Wow.
free meal.
Wow. I mean, I might have to get back into playing cricket again, but probably never get Player of the Day.
You never know. In the under nines, you might.
Might get banned from sports grounds.
Yeah, totally.
What gives you hope?
Great question. Seeing kindness in other people who didn't have to show it, and that kindness through acts that they do for others. I see so much goodness day to day, week to week. I see good humans doing good things, not posting about it to be told how good they are. God, this world has so many good people. So good people and humans give me hope.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I love that answer. So diving into a bit about you, mate. I think, I know you've been sort of touched by suicide recently. Would you like to share a bit of that yarn?
Yeah, I would. It's interesting you ask that, because most people don't want to talk about this. And it's a taboo subject for some reason. And in some cultures, it's like we can't go there. So recently, I had a friend who was 50, incredibly successful, worked at the very top of Apple globally, a couple of young kids, and I didn't see it coming, and gone. 36 hours later, get a phone call from my former wife, who still works at the school that I used to work at. I said, James, can you just pull over? I can hear you driving. Can you pull over? I was like, yeah, it's weird. Why would you ask me to pull over? What's up? She went, I've got some news for you. And she proceeded to tell me a young student I used to teach from the age of 8 had just taken his life that weekend. So it was like within 36 hours, I was like, God, what's going on? This is crazy. And I hadn't really thought about suicide for a while. Prior to that, I did think about it often, because the school that I taught at, like many other schools in New Zealand, has had a number of suicides. And that really concerned me. Working at a school, seeing these kids and not knowing what was going on in their heads, looking outwardly like they were polished and happy. Most of them are very successful academically, in sports. Socially, they looked like they were doing really well. But a number of kids in the time that I worked there had taken their lives, ranging from 9 years of age up to 18. So I got very curious about the topic and went on a mission to try and learn about it. Selfishly, as a dad, Finn's 8. At some point, he's going to be a teenager. That's the danger zone. One of the danger zones, at least for men.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do everything I can as a dad to say, hey, I did everything I could to equip him and surround him with what he needs, so that hopefully he can navigate that successfully.
Post those, the deaths of your friends and former student, how did you handle that? What did you do to sort of make sure you were, or get closure, or sort of looked after through that grieving process?
I'll be honest, Matthew, I felt like shit. It's I'm known as being very optimistic. When I'm speaking with people and training and coaching, it's all positive psychology. And what are we focused on, and where to next, and let's set goals. And so I don't often sit in emotions. But I was really deeply sad for probably 3 or 4 days after the news, and spoke about it a lot with my partner, how I was feeling.
Good.
Put the tools down. I didn't work hardly that week. I kind of withdrew a little bit just to reflect. Journaled a lot. I brought my journal with me, as you can see today. It kind of goes everywhere with me. I journaled on how I was feeling. And then I got angry. I was bloody angry, actually. I was like, what the hell? Like, what are these amazing men thinking? One was 18 and one was 50. What the hell were they thinking? And then I decided I can't be angry. Angry is not good. And I met with a friend for lunch, and we started chatting, and I said, God, I'm feeling angry, but I've got to focus on the positive emotion. And he challenged me on that, and it was great. He says, James, anger's a great thing. He said, you've got to express it, you've got to talk about it, you've got to use it. He's like, it's how you use anger is the most important thing. So we explored how I could actually use anger and express it and not hurt others and not hurt myself. Shit, that was helpful. Because, yeah, it was sadness, then anger, then it was grief.
Well, this is part of the stages of grief. And, you know, when there's been a death by suicide, a lot of people are angry because they think it's selfish and all these things. But actually, that's where that person was and they couldn't see a way out, right?
Yep, 100%. And I can't imagine that. I just can't picture it. And I try to. And that's why I'd learn and read and ask. Because these are, when I look at these two individuals, more recently ones, smart, switched on, pillars of the community, successful. Like, they have real cognition. Like, they're switched on. Like, how could they have got to that? And I'm thinking, like, again, selfishly, I feel like I'm pretty, like, with it and, you know, clicked into the community in the world. Could that happen to me? Like, if it happened to them, could I flick a switch? Like, well, probably. And that's a scary thought. So, yeah, it's I feel better now than I did 2 weeks, you know, after that news. I didn't get to either of the funerals. That was tough. With my work, often people will book me out to speak 5-6 months in advance for their conference. One was in Auckland on Stu's funeral, and I was in Queenstown for Connor's, and I asked the people, hey, could you get another speaker? Could you find someone else? And for whatever reason, we couldn't find one. But here's where technology came in. I was able to watch a live stream. And I remember sitting in a cafe, Voodoo Cafe in Queenstown, watching one of them.
I was going to say, where did you go to do it? But in a cafe, that's...
Yeah, I had to eat, and it was about an hour before I had to speak, and it was the only place that kind of had good Wi-Fi, and so I got in there, put the headphones in so nobody else had to...
And some dark glasses.
Yeah, it was very, very tough.
Wow.
And then an hour later I had to get on stage and get the job done. But yeah, it was tough. Hopefully that don't have to traverse that anytime soon again.
Yeah, hopefully not. One of the things you said is you caught up with a friend sort of afterwards to talk about how you were feeling. I mean, that's, you said you hope you don't find yourself in that situation, but if you're open and willing to talk about these things, then that's a hugely positive thing. Do you find that happens often within your circles and your networks, that people are open to talking about how they're feeling and what's going on with them?
No, I honestly, I don't think many men that I know talk openly about feelings. They talk a lot about thinkings, what they're thinking and what they're doing, what they're moving towards, maybe what they've done, but very few males that I know will talk about feelings. And it's interesting, I get to meet a lot of leaders as I do my work, and some of them, many of them, males, struggle to talk about feelings. It's soft. And I'm like, yeah, but the soft stuff, it's the hard stuff.
And, yeah, it's when you start to ask these questions, I always say rigor mortis sets in and you can see them stiffening up, right?
Totally. 100%.
Why do you think that they don't want to talk about it? It's too hard, uncomfortable, trying to be vulnerable? It's seen as weak?
Probably two things come to mind for me. One, they don't know how to talk about it. They don't know where to start. And two, there's also this idea of brand. How am I perceived? How might that impact my opportunities professionally or socially? What might happen to me on the pecking order if I show that I'm struggling? So I think those are, for me anyway, just through experience with dealing with humans, that's probably the things that come up for me.
When you went on your, let's call it research or discovery journey, what were some things you found that really perhaps shocked you or fundamentally changed your way of thinking?
Yeah, so I sat down with our former Prime Minister and he had set up a DPMC for suicide prevention.
DPMC?
Yeah, so it's a department, essentially, a governmental department that will just focus on one specific task. And so his idea was to figure out what's driving it in New Zealand, because we have very awful statistics. I think in the OECD we're either number 1 or 2.
Correct.
In teen suicide.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to know. And he said, look, James, there's 3 things that we've discovered through this that drive our statistics here. 1 is sexual abuse in the home. 2 is drugs. and 3 is online social media bullying. So I started processing that and actually quantifying that and going, yep, I can see that. That makes sense. But about a month later, I sat down with Dr. Warren Farrell, and him and John Gray co-authored a book. A lot of people might not know Warren, but they'll know John through Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Yep, yep.
So Dr. Warren and him wrote this book called The Boy Crisis. Every male should read this book. Every dad, buy it today, get it read. It's phenomenal. He consults to the White House and has done for many years on boys and men's health. For many years, there was only women and girls' health that was addressed. And he says, well, actually, we've got a pandemic of male suicide and mental health, and that drives violence. And so he started working on that. And I said, look, I want to present to you what my Prime Minister has shared. I want to get your take. He says, your Prime Minister's right and your Prime Minister's wrong. I said, okay, not too many people say that. Tell me more. So he said, look, what your Prime Minister has described are secondary factors. I said, okay, what are the primary factors? He went, no. He said, it's singular. It's one. It's a primary factor. He's like, this is the number one reason that we have such high suicide statistics for men. He's like, men are, I think, 3 to 4 times more likely. Mm-hmm. Teenage boys are 6 times more likely than teenage girls to do it. He says, here's the number one factor. So I've got pen and paper ready for this big explanation. He said, lack of a present positive male role model. That's it. I says, what do you mean? He says, kids, young boys who grow up without a present dad, their statistics go through the roof for suicide, possible suicide in their life. If they have a dad that's there but they're abusive, again, through the roof statistics. But not only suicide, academic outcomes, social outcomes, incarceration rates. It was phenomenal what he was able to share with me. And he said, it's when there's this lack of present male role model that things like those secondary factors creep in, the drug stuff, the sexual abuse, the online bullying. It's like kids don't have the resilience, the tools, the connection, the community around them to navigate some of the challenges thrown at them. So I find it fascinating and sent me on a mission of going, well, does that mean every boy that doesn't have a dad is screwed? And well, the data doesn't show that, but it does show that they need a male role model. Could be a coach, could be a teacher, could be a neighbour that's just a really solid person.
What age do you think it is that network or connection become a thing? So when we look at self-efficacy, self-efficacy is high in males. Having a good role model is one part of that. Having the psychological traits and good connection, it sort of goes hand in hand in that. I guess that's the bit we're trying to target. But where do you think there's an age where that starts to kick in?
That you need to have that connection? I honestly think right from birth, like when you look at when a dad or a male bonds with a newborn, the oxytocin that a mum has, the dad starts to release that when they're literally cuddling with their baby, which they talk about mum brain and baby brain. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, it's the same for dads. We get the same thing, and we build that literally that muscle of connection. So I think it starts right at birth, but there's probably some crucial stages, and I think around that 7 or 8 is so crucial. Like a young kid is starting to see the world for what it is in their own way. I think having real deep connection and guidance there. Again, at 13 and 14, almost 7 years later, same thing. Having someone solid. I had a great dad, had a great granddad, but one for me was my drumming teacher, Gary, and David as well. Like they were just brilliant and solid humans, thoughtful, safe to be around. God, they had such an impact on me.
Well, that's really important, and it's that. How do we help people? Be open to having those good connections or role models? What advice would you have in that regard?
Look, I have interesting thoughts around things like BNI. So for people who are not familiar with that, business networking, I don't warm to it. I find it very transactional. I find it you do this for me, I'll do this for you. And actually, we're going to measure it. And if you don't do enough of it, we'll call you out on not sending me enough referrals. I hate that stuff, Matthew. Hate it. I'm like, no, how about we play the long game? We get to know each other. Maybe you're going to be a good guy, maybe I'm going to be a good guy. Maybe we can help each other after we get to know each other and have some fun together. I don't like this transactional stuff. So I think get out there and find good humans to be around. Try not to expect anything from them and just give. And that giving might just be sharing your story. That giving might be talking about your emotions. That giving might be an act where you help them or you buy them a coffee or you whatever, help them with their work. But I think take your time, look for long game relationships, not short term.
And sometimes you've got to treat it like dating. Yes, you will have a shit yarn or you meet it, or not necessarily a shit person, but in your opinion that you didn't click with them, you have to be prepared to keep moving on, right?
100%. Yeah, move forward. And I think we're not all supposed to get on. We don't all have common interests. And I think, yeah, keep moving, but also be open to different people being around you. You know, I hang out with a real eclectic bunch. I live in Littleton, so for those that...
Oh, right. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
People have their connotations of what kind of person lives there, right? It's quirky. It's a real bunch of different thinkers, and I love it. So I'm around a lot of different people, and I like being challenged on things. You know, I've got beliefs on religion because I grew up in Northern Ireland, so I seen it as this big contentious thing, and it created a lot of conflict. Whereas hanging out with ministers and people who are deeply religious, they can show me this whole different side to it. And I appreciate that, you know? So be open to hanging out with different people.
And having, well, it sounds like interesting yarns too.
100%.
Awesome. So how have these recent experiences perhaps shaped the work and some of the things you share in your speaking around the place?
It's interesting. I deal with high performers and I get asked to speak on high performance. So I'm often dealing with, say, professional athletes who are at the top of their game. How do they get the extra 1% and win the game? Or I'm dealing with CEOs and senior leadership teams. How do we win in the industry and make the money, etc.? But I always bring it back to this. I believe high performance, from a human and both a professional point of view, is consistently exceeding norms whilst maintaining healthy relationships and well-being. And I don't think perfect relationships or perfect well-being is the key there. It's just healthy. So addressing when they're not operating well, addressing when things are maybe not as they should be, rather than just focusing on the result. And I talk about high performers should take their meds, and I believe every human should take their meds. I'm not a doctor. This is not medical advice. Before you get any...
Yeah, I was going to say, and what particular meds should we be taking? Well, I've got my notepad here.
There's 4 things you got to take every day, and think about them. Number 1, the M in meds stands for mental training. So mindset, meditation, mindfulness, whatever you want to call it. But learning to focus our mind. Some people doing meditation is actually very dangerous for them. It's not right for everyone. And so looking at a walk. Nelson Mandela used to walk for hours in the morning. That was his meditation. So mental training. E is for exercise. I mean, we'll look at the statistics around what it does for us, how we feel when we're looking good, feeling good, moving our bodies. There's this BDNF released for our brain, which only gets released when we exercise. So E is important. D, diet. What are we putting in? When we eat crap food that's ultra processed, that looks good on the packaging and is marketed everywhere, we generally feel crap. But you don't see too many big adverts with billions of dollars behind them advertising for carrots, apples, bananas, right? So D, keeping an eye on the intake. That includes alcohol. That includes vaping, marijuana, whatever your thing is, just keeping an eye on that. Last but not least, S, sleep. When we have shit sleep, we are shitty. I can attest to that. I'm not sure about you.
Yeah, sleep is... Yeah, I'm not the great sleeper at the moment, but yeah.
It's tough. It takes its toll. If there was a study done with, it was 45 to 50-year-old males, and they put them under these conditions where they could only sleep a maximum of 6 hours a night for 7 nights. Most of them were sleeping more than that prior. And they got to the point about 4 days in where all of them were the equivalent of legally drunk. So they wouldn't be able to drive a car. Decision making is impaired. Yeah, 6 hours or less, and you're in that zone.
That's crazy. When you think about you're not allowed to sign you have to be, what is it, sane, sober and of age to sign a contract. So how many people are signing contracts when they're legally intoxicated?
100%.
So when you're working with clients, are you focusing on sleep with the meds piece? Is that, and is sleep what it always comes back to? Because I'm assuming the people you deal with are the high performing, and they don't have a lot of time for sleeping.
100%. What I deal with when I deal with a client one-to-one is look at the whole person. And often they'll come to me because they want to make the money or they want to sell the business or whatever it might be. And I'm like, cool, we can work on that. But that's one pillar. There's more to life than just business and work and money. So I like to focus on relationship, key relationship or relationships, focusing on our health, our mental well-being, connection with nature. I love to focus on all that stuff. Because at the end of the day, we are creatures that need to be connected with more than just a computer screen and a bank on an app, So I like to focus on the whole thing.
Taking it down from high performing, high achievers, what advice would you have for the everyday man or person for that matter around those things?
Keep it simple and stay focused on WMI, what's most important. Like I always write that down at the start of the day, WMI today. What's most important today? And it's generally, 2 sections of my life, personal and professional. And I imagine most people that are listening today, most of them are still working in some capacity. Some might be retired. But, what's most important in my personal life today and what's most important in my work? And then sticking to that. Saying no more often. Say, no, I can't do that. No, I'm not going to be there. You know what? No, I can't stay for the 4th beer because I'm going to get home.
Yeah. People struggle. Well, a lot of the yarns I have, they struggle with that, answering some of the 4 questions. So they struggle with that, what's important to me, because there's this sense of what they think society wants of them, and versus what they're capable of, or what they're comfortable telling people. How do you break through that?
There's always a piece of advice I would give them. I don't like giving out too much advice. I prefer asking questions, but
I'm asking the questions, mate.
I'm feeling comfortable here. This is great. I love it. Role reversal. So what the first piece of advice I'd say is listen to or read the book by Bronnie Ware. She was a palliative care nurse who wrote a book called The Top Regrets of the Dying. Amazing book. Number 1 regret of the dying. These are people on their deathbeds who know they're dying, who are being asked the question, what did you regret in your life when you look back? Number 1 regret was this. I regret living my life, making decisions and choices based upon what I thought other people thought I should do. What might look good in my neighborhood, what might look good at work, what my parents wanted me to study, etc. What car I should buy because I live in the nice neighborhood, so I need the Range Rover. Well, actually, no. Do you love the Range Rover? No. Then why did you buy it? Because it looks good. No, buy it because you love it, and fair play if you do. But a lot of people make decisions based upon what looks right or what's perceived to be right, or they study the MBA because that looks good and that's going to help them on their LinkedIn profile. God, silly decision. Do the MBA because you're curious and excited and passionate, not because you think it's a tick and an extra 40K somewhere down the line. Do what's most important to you. Screw what you think other people think. At the end of the day, most of them are busy being busy, doing their own thing. They actually don't really care what you're doing in terms of your work and your choices. Get on with it and do what's most important to you.
Mate, that's some fantastic advice and a fantastic yarn. I feel like we could go down a whole lot of rabbit holes from here, but it's probably a good place to wrap up, and we can get more into it tomorrow night.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you so much for your yarn. Really appreciate it today.
An absolute joy. Thank you, Matthew. Pleasure.
Cheers.